Hey guys, these are my notes on healing Mythic Plus Temple of the Jade Serpent as a casting Mistweaver. I'll try and cover the basics, meaning where I like my cooldowns, important mobs to help CC and interrupt, and commonly unavoided damage that you shouldn't have to heal through, but probably will. Before you start, figure out if anyone can spec into Decurse for the later trash. It'll make things way easier, not just on you, but on everyone. Starting going left, droplets do constant group damage while they're up, but as much as this sucks on Fortified or Raging weeks, the other mobs are still top priority. Water Speakers cast Hydrolance and Tidal Burst. The first just needs to be spot healed or interrupted, but Tidal Burst does massive group damage, enough to instantly wipe a group on high keys, or if they're not topped off, so it should always be the priority interrupt. All of our CC works to stop this cast, if the rest of your group somehow fails to do so. The big elementals cast Tainted Ripple, which can and should be line-of-sighted if possible. Since it's a quick cast, this relies a lot on the tank positioning it as close to a corner as possible. If it isn't line-of-sighted, or if your group can't seem to do it properly, it's a lot of burst and an additional rot damage that you can power through with Yu'lon and some enveloping spam, or Revival, which counters the burst and dispels the rot. Wise Mari is a great fight for healers in general, since technically 90% of the damage is avoidable. I usually DPS for most of this fight and occasionally help interrupt Hydrolance. Whenever someone gets Corrupted Vortex on them, I'll start a Soothing and or Enveloping Mist, so I'm ready to hit them with a Vivify or two once the debuff goes off. If they make sure they're moving as it expires, they shouldn't take an extra tick afterwards. However, most of the deaths during this fight seem to come from Vortexed people panicking. They'll cross the water when it isn't safe, getting chunked for a ton of damage and then finished off by the debuff a second later, or they'll get hit by a Hydrolance just before or after it expires, which is why it doesn't hurt to spam heals on them for a second or two before and after. The rest is just dodging and dancing. Heading to the next boss, the two pandas are absolutely terrible. They throw torches at random players periodically that gives a nasty dispellable dot, and then they leap at random players and do big damage also. I like to pop Yu'lon and use all my cooldowns here, at least until the first panda dies. Cocoon, Diffuse, and Revival are all good for getting through the torch dots, but it's especially important you top off anyone who takes damage immediately, in case they get picked by the next ability. The baby Sha that come with a lot of the trash packs in Temple blow up for a lot when they die, so unless your group is really good about staggering kills, you'll want to push a lot of healing when they're almost dead, especially if you can land a Sheilun's Gift or a multi-target Vivify in whatever time you get between kills. It's worth noting, at least to my knowledge, that Raging does affect the baby Sha, and if I'm remembering right, it affects their death explosion too. So if you or someone in your group can land an AoE stun, like Leg Sweep, just before they hit 30%, if you can kill them before the stun wears off, that means no Raging explosions. I try and Leg Sweep when I can, but I still prepare for the worst. The only other trash in this wing that's worth noting is the last pack before Strife and Peril. Especially on Fortified weeks, there's a lot of potential damage going on. The monkey's crying, so there's blue swirls all over for you to dodge, and this means lots of spot healing for the people who don't. He also enrages, which is just more tank and overall damage, I think. The tiger leaps at random people and puts a bleed on them, which needs a bit more upkeep, but what's really dangerous, if you ask me, is the beetle, who puts up a golden barrier that bursts for a load of group damage when it depletes or gets purged. This is normally what kills people, since that, on top of all the other damage, is enough to kill. Yu'lon and Revival are good for powering through while you can, since we can do a lot to keep people topped off. If you can somehow find a few free GCDs in all this chaos, most of our non-interrupt CC can stop or delay the barrier cast. The rest is just hoping that they kill the beetle first, and fast, or at least something before the healing cooldowns run out. Especially after the nerfs to Strife and Peril, I don't give much thought to healing this boss. Whoever has the debuff needs a little bit of extra healing since it's a stacking dot, and if they trade it to me, I usually just give it to another DPS since they can use it way more. If your group is bad at switching to keep both bosses from keeping high stacks, the tank and ticking group damage is going to hurt way more. I'll usually use Yu'lon on cooldown and cover everyone with a mix of Enveloping, Vivify, and Essence Font with Jade Wind. Sheilun fits in nicely to keep ahead of things, and all my other cooldowns fit nicely wherever one person or a lot of people are taking more damage than usual. Once you've got Strife and Peril down, if you don't have someone in your group who can dispel curses, the next trash is just not fun. The Mistweavers do a nasty channeled dot that needs to be interrupted, but they also do a bomb that can be dispelled before or after it expires, ideally before, that does a huge burst of damage to anyone in its radius, plus a massive healing negation that you'll have to deal with. This is miserable to heal through if you don't have a Curse Dispeller, but it's still doable. Your group might just have to take that into account and use health pots to help clear the negation on uglier packs. Minions of Doubt hurt. I've seen a single minion's Dark Claw ability hit the tank for 2/3 of their health on a high Fort or Raging Key. If your tank isn't mitigating this, expect to have to heal them a lot and fast. Otherwise, you can help interrupt the fear on the other Shaw ads, but they're the worst part of these packs in my opinion. Since all of her other abilities are avoidable, Lu Flameheart is all about single target healing. Stay at a healthy enough distance that you have time to dodge if a wave comes at you, otherwise the meat of this fight is generally 70% to 30%. For the first almost third of the fight, just dispel Serpent Strike on the tank when she does it. When she's below 70%, Jade Serpent Strike, which it's now called, is not dispellable, also does a massive dot and healing negation, and it just hits for a lot. It's a good idea to prime as much tank healing as possible for each time she does this, which for me means precasting Essence Font, Enveloping, and Soothing Mist, then just mashing Vivify until we're through it. Sometimes this takes a few casts, so it runs right up against when the waves shoot out, which can be dangerous if I'm tunnel visioning, so I try and stay at a healthy distance. Hopefully your tank is planning out mitigation as much as you're planning out your heals, otherwise they'll go down fast. Cocoon can smooth out one Jade Serpent Strike even though it still needs a lot of healing, and Yu'lon with Enveloping Breath can amp up your healing for another one. Once she drops 30%, everything's easy again, since nearly everything is avoidable. Just make sure you back off for a second when the dragon spawns, since it gets twitchy about proximity aggro. The last trash is just more of what you've already seen, with an emphasis on more and worse. On the first and right pack, the Mistweaver needs to be interrupted, and hopefully you have someone to decurse, again. On the left, you got another Mistweaver, but what's more deadly is the 2 Water Speakers, since any tidal bursts going off can be deadly. Basic spot healing is needed again for the Hydrolance damage, but I try and focus more on having CC ready for the Water Speakers. If you have to let one tidal burst go off, that's fine if your group is prepared for it, or if you have a healing cooldown ready. But if you can juggle a combination of interrupts and larger CC like Leg Sweep and Ring, you can help buy a lot of time for your group to kill one, at which point the fight becomes a lot more manageable. The final pack is a ton of very spiky tank damage, thanks to the minions, but it's also a lot of group damage since the big Shaw keeps spawning waves of little Shaw. Depending what you're killing first, you might end up with multiple sets of baby Shaw, which all explode on death. So be ready to heal through that, ideally with Yu'lon. If your tank is going to kite, even a little, try not to be too far from them so that they can pick up any new Shaw ads that turn on you. Otherwise, if you can last long enough for them to kill the minions, the tank damage gets pretty mild pretty quick. For the last boss, it's just a matter of pacing your healing and your mana spending. Be quick dispelling the first out of each set of debuffs, then spot heal the second target until you can get theirs cleared too. On higher keys, the boss is spitting out some pretty significant damage at random targets, constantly, so be mindful of that, especially if it picks the second debuff target whose health is probably already spiking. What you really want to be prepared for is when debuffs come out less than 10 seconds before Bounds of Reality, since the second debuff will carry over into that phase for at least a couple seconds. I try and save Diffuse for the sets just before Bounds, so I can double Dispel during one of these overlaps. Revival works for another, and doesn't rely on chance like Diffuse does. This overlap starts to happen at the second intermission, in my experience, and how bad it is really depends on how your group is positioning to handle these phases. At least on non-quaking weeks, I'm used to doing it a certain way, where we run to the corner and put our backs against that wall just before each set of ads. That way they're all stacked up and I can run out and ring a piece after tossing a heal or two. The rest is just spot healing if anyone's letting their ad punch them, and sometimes I'll use Yu'lon if it gets ugly, since the boss is still spitting on you throughout that phase. On high keys or tyrannical weeks, even if your group is doing everything right, this becomes a serious battle of attrition, and the only thing that gets me through it is a good sense of how little healing I need to do to get by. I haven't done this boss a different way in a long time, but if your group spreads for intermission, I'd imagine Yu'lon can cover each of these phases, and you just power through the damage with healing. So those are my notes on healing Temple as a casting Mistweaver. There's a lot of healing intensive moments in this one, but I think we handle it well, aside from if we end up with no Curse Dispellers. I hope someone finds this collection of thoughts useful, even if they're a bit general. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll keep them coming. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a good one.